And thanks for that report. Well, joining me now, Jason Rantz Show radio host, Jason Rantz. Hey, Jason, good to see you. These stories seem like they are spiraling out of control. Minneapolis, Los Angeles, you're in Seattle. Talk about what you're seeing and if you think actually a couple of years into this, it's getting worse, not better.
It's definitely getting worse, and the same script is unfolding pretty much everywhere that embrace these kind of defund movements. We saw a lot of policies coming out of the BLM movement that were embraced by Democrat leaders, whether it's defunding, whether it's drug decriminalization, which is effectively drug legalization, whether it's this permissive homelessness policy. We've seen criminals and the homeless take advantage. They know how far they can go without paying any price. And the unfortunate reality is, rather than turn back and go back to some of the policies that we knew worked, there are a lot of Democrat leaders who are just doubling or sometimes tripling down on some of the bad ideas because they are blinded by their own ideology as to what's happening on the ground.
You know, as a business owner in Los Angeles that was commenting on what he experienced, I think about business owners a lot, and I thought about them from the very beginning when we had the defund the police movement. One of the things I was saying then is this is going to kill businesses in those communities because they're not going to be able to operate. They're not going to be able to expand. And I think that's what we're seeing. Is the damage now getting to a point, Jason, where it's going to be incredibly difficult to reverse because these communities have lost that foundation of commerce that was sort of holding them up? It was the one point of hope in many of these places.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we've seen happen, and certainly we've seen it happen in Portland, LA, and here in Seattle, is businesses have closed down because they constantly are getting targeted by low-level crime that isn't getting punished. And it's just no longer feasible for them to stay in operation, nor is it safe for their staff. You've also seen, and this has some significant implications, you've seen companies deciding to keep people in the remote workforce, even though they don't have to do that, right, because of the downtown cores of some of these cities are so dangerous, and they don't want to risk that with their staff. You see that right now with Amazon and some others here in Seattle. Well, the implications with that, of course, is you're really hitting the downtown economies where you are not having the same number of people going into local retail, restaurants, coffee shops. All of that is going away, and some of it is staying within, the communities that these folks are living in. But, when we're looking at how the economy is really functioning in a Seattle or an LA or a Portland, if those cores aren't being fulfilled, the economic promise, well, that brings down a city really, really quickly, and it can spiral out of control. And my fear is some of the cities were kind of already there, if not already too far gone.
Right. I mean, they weren't in a great place to begin with in some cases. And exactly, the ripple effect is massive in these downtown areas when people won't come back to the office. You hear mayors and politicians in some of these cities talking a very different game than they were talking 2 years ago. They're talking about more police. They're talking about getting crime under control. But it doesn't make a difference as far as I can tell when you're looking at the data on this. Is it all talk, or is anybody actually getting the message here?
There are a few politicians who have, in fact, moved in the right direction. I think if you look at Portland, their decision to refund the police, but it's not going far enough. But you're right. We're hearing a lot of talk. Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, she talks a really good game about how Chicago is really up and coming still, and there's still so much more promise there despite what COVID did to it. That's not the case. Here in Seattle, we have a mayor, the same thing, Bruce Harrell, who's basically saying, yes, I fully support the police, but he's not allowing them to do their jobs. And again, in some instances, it's not just because of city lack of leadership. At the state level, we've seen laws that have been passed that have really, part of the pun, have handcuffed the police to actually do their jobs. And so all of this is happening at once, and it's going to take a very long time to undo. The question is how much damage is going to really be sustained between now and when we get back to that right path. There are some things that can happen to get us closer to where we need to be, and that's the November election for a lot of folks. But it's going to take a very long time.
It's incredibly frustrating to hear how long it's going to take to fix this. I wonder if you think the talk we're hearing is going to keep some of these blue city mayors in office, or if you think there's actually a bigger groundswell of people who aren't listening to the talk anymore and simply saying the results are bad and we want to go in a different direction.
So the unfortunate reality is, if you're living in a state or a city that's already very, very far to the left, maybe you get a slightly more moderate Democrat. Maybe. You're not going to really see mayorships change dramatically, in my view. I think you'll start to see maybe on the law enforcement side of things, the criminal justice side. Seattle City Attorney went to a Republican for the first time in some 30 years. And that was, in fact, fueled by a lot of disgust over what was happening on the ground, although there's a little asterisk there because she was running against someone who was quite literally an abolitionist who wanted to get rid of her position. So there's that little asterisk there. But I do I do think, especially what we saw with Chesa Boudin in San Francisco,
right.
People are paying attention, they're waking up, and they're starting to make some change. It's just not going to be a dramatic change in these cities.
These cities just don't have time. They just don't have time for gradual change. I think economically, politically, socially, from a security standpoint. May it happen that voters can get it together and find some folks who want to and can lead in these places. Jason, we got to leave it there. Always good to see you.
Yeah.
Thanks for being with us. Jason
Thanks,
Rantz.
Brian.